We will get started in about 1 minute, so if you could all return to your seats and draw your attention to the front, that would be great. Thank you. We will get started in a few seconds here, so please, if you could all find your seats, that would be great. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of the International Conference on Public Health and Nutrition. It's so lovely to look out at this audience and see well-rested and keen faces, and I'm sure you're all ready to engage in another day of dialogue on adolescent well-being. I left this room yesterday with some answers to complex realities in ensuring adolescent well-being, as well as questions born from newfound inspiration and curiosity. No doubt, today will prove to be equally, if not more, enriching to our shared goal of improving adolescent health and well-being. We would like to begin today's events with our second keynote address. This will be followed by 3 more technical sessions with esteemed speakers sharing their insights on topics such as nutrition, food systems, AI, digital health, governance, and financing, all with the lens of securing bright futures for our adolescents. Before we dive in, I'd like to welcome you all to follow Sukaria on social media outlets if you'd like a recap of yesterday's speakers and for live updates of today's events. So let's begin. It is my honor to invite Professor K. Srinath Reddy, Honorary Distinguished Professor of Public Health Foundation India, and Chancellor of Public Health Foundation India Institute of Public Health Sciences, to the stage to deliver our second keynote address. Professor Reddy has made significant contributions to the field of public health and has donned an array of hats as a researcher, teacher, policy enabler, advocate, and activist, promoting healthy living across the lifespan. Please join me in welcoming Professor Reddy.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here at this event that's been organized by Sukaria, which addresses a very relevant topic of great social value, but also is scientifically enriched by very many presentations. The theme of focusing on adolescent health and nutrition and well-being is absolutely important in the context of India's development, but is also absolutely crucial in terms of our own identification of what societal value should be. In terms of the theme, while I see that nutrition and well-being have been very well blended, and that's absolutely appropriate. So health and nutrition are inseparable, and I also see from the presentations and the agenda that mental health features quite substantially, particularly in today's presentations. So physical and mental health are also integrally intertwined. So we recognize that particularly in this era of polycrisis, with economic instability, conflict, climate change, there are very many forces that are impacting upon health of society, and particularly likely to endanger the health and well-being of adolescents. And all these are inseparable. As the Scottish-American naturalist John Muir once said, if you tug at anything, you will find that you will be pulling at everything else in the universe. So virtually, it's the connectedness of all elements in the society, whether it's social, environmental, commercial, or other determinants of health. We must recognize that all of them need to be addressed in unison, and to that extent, this conference does blend them well. I believe in terms of adolescence, it is an absolutely important period of rapid growth and change in a complex environment where even adults find it extremely difficult to adapt. But we know that in the case of adolescence, there are multiple challenges that they're subjected to. It's a period of promise and potential, also a period of problems and perils. We recognize that nutrition, mental health, physical health, all of these become very important as the adolescent wades through that very sensitive period of life. Then, in terms of nutrition in particular, we know that there are several issues that we need to address. In terms of the challenges that we have faced in our developmental journey of seeing the specter of undernutrition imperiling early childhood, but later on also being reflected in multiple ways, even in adolescence, those challenges do remain. But at the same time, we see the challenges of overweight and obesity coming up very rapidly in an environment where multiple commercial pressures and distorted food and agricultural policies are resulting in diets which are certainly not conducive to good health. So when we're looking at the adolescent, we recognize that the adolescent is subjected to physical and mental assaults of conflicts and commerce, is being pulled by pressures in different directions from parents and peers. And in this welter of confusion, the adolescent is desperately seeking one's own identity, even as parents, teachers, family members, and other adults tell them how to shape their lives now and in the future. So rebellion is natural, and rebellion is something that would happen even otherwise when a generational shift takes place. But they're also easy prey to temptation, and therefore they're a prey to a very number of malign commercial and social media influences. They're being tossed into a world of conflict and chaos, wars and pandemics, climate change, economic instability, and social discord. And we have the social media coming up as a major challenge as well. They're informed, influenced, intimidated, and inundated by the social media. They're digitally hyperconnected, but emotionally disconnected. And therefore, we have to ensure that we can offer them the kind of support and steer so that they can navigate this world and develop into adults who can actually lead their lives to full potential. Now, it is very frequent that the adolescent brain is described and dismissed as an immature brain. I would beg to disagree. I would call it an evolving brain, a maturing brain rather than an immature brain. True that the prefrontal and the frontal cortex are yet to be fully developed, and therefore some of the social restraints that come from a fully developed temporal lobe and prefrontal cortex are not there to rein them in from rash behavior. Yet, I would classify this period as an evolutionary success because the adolescent brain looks for adventure and innovation. The adolescent brain is risk-taking, sometimes at peril, but often leading to new discoveries and new ways of looking at things. The adolescent brain seeks approval from peers, therefore there's social bonding, and together they can actually become a transformational force. In fact, if you look at some of the greatest innovations that have come in, because the risk-taking and innovative ability of the adolescent brain, you find that most of the people who are now considered to be captains of industry, whether it's Bill Gates or anybody else, actually did most of their contributions in their younger years. So I would say that if we want civilizational advance and not merely being mired down in status quo, then it is the adolescents who, with their spirit of adventure, innovation, risk-taking, and enterprise, can actually lead us on to a better future. But they need our support. They need our support so that their rashness does not lead to unfortunate incidents and accidents, that their creative abilities are fostered while some of their indiscriminate acts can be tempered. And that's where the collective responsibility of society comes in to ensure that the health, nutrition are well protected. Now, in terms of nutrition, I know that there are some people who are associated even with the movement we started in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, now has an independent NGO status, Hriday. So when I speak to school students, I say, in terms of healthy nutrition, there are 4 legs of the table, of the dining table, if you will. One is variety, second is balance, third is regularity, fourth is moderation. If you follow these 4 principles, then you are likely to have healthy nutrition. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. We are finding a lot of commercial pressures which actually tilt them towards unhealthy diets. We do not find food and agricultural policies which are supportive of crop diversity, which can result in dietary diversity. Right from production to processing and pricing and promotion of foods, we find that the forces are actually leading towards unhealthy diets and now resulting, of course, in overweight and obesity as a major burgeoning global pandemic affecting India, including the lower social classes, which means the social gradient has also reversed or is reversing. So these are things that we need to look at. But at the same time, science is advancing and telling us where we must lead our efforts to. Now we understand much more about the microbiome. We understand that when we eat a food, we are not only eating for ourselves, we are eating for the trillions of microbes that populate our gut and elsewhere in the body. That we may not be able to digest fiber, but they can, and they do. And they help us by producing vitamins, they help us by fostering our immunity, and they help us by fostering our neuroendocrine axis. Previously, we used to talk about the neuroendocrine axis, then the neuroimmunoendocrine axis. Now we talk about the neuroendocrine immuno-gut axis. We know that the gut microbiome and the brain are in constant two-way communication, that the enteric nerve plexus talks through the vagus nerve to the brain, and the brain talks back to the gut, and that the kind of chemicals that are actually produced by the microbiome can be either very harmful or helpful. If you produce short-chain fatty acids, it's good for health. If you produce TMA, then that's likely to be toxic to the blood vessels and result in a variety of vascular damage, heart attacks and strokes and so on. So now that we understand these connections, it's important for us to focus on not just telling people what to eat, but make it possible for them to eat the right kind of diets through our right kind of not only nutritional education, but by aligning food and agriculture policies, which makes it possible for people to make and maintain healthy living choices across the lifetime. At the same time, the commercial forces will have to be reined in so that ultra-processed foods are not aggressively marketed, which are likely to erode their immunity, destroy the gut microbiome, and produce toxic chemicals like TMA, which are vascular toxic. So these are responsibilities of the entire society. In fact, if there is a burgeoning epidemic of overweight and obesity, or even if there is still a lot of undernutrition that's going on, if children are not safe on the streets, if the climate is actually now also posing multiple threats to their health, then I would classify it as civilizational failure. It's a failure of the collective society, and therefore adults have to bear a responsibility for it, and they have to undertake corrective measures, and we need to actually move in that direction. And we know that in terms of policies, we need policies on tobacco, alcohol, ultra-processed foods, road safety. There are many things to be done. And we need social media regulation. But this cannot happen purely because adults want to do something about it, but it cannot be a prescriptive process. You have to engage young people. You have to ensure their leadership, their active, engaged involvement in this. And particularly when we're talking about young people making choices which are likely to be important for the rest of their lives, it's important that we enable them to take that leadership position. And we also ought to ensure there is a supportive social environment. Parents telling children what kind of careers they must pursue and driving them to desperation if they're failing to achieve those goals and live the dreams that their parents have for them, and committing suicides, which we see repeatedly in the papers, whether it is the various entrance examinations or the pressures of coaching classes. Then we must also ensure that young people across the board are not only able to make well-informed, independent choices about their lives, but collectively can influence social policies which are important for them in terms of their nutrition, road safety, as well as other areas of societal life, including climate change and environment. Therefore, it is important that we build intergenerational dialogues in which across generations we speak with each other and then ensure that there's a collective consensus on what actions to take, which must be led by the young people with support from the other generations. And that is the kind of platforms that we need to create. And if this conference can do that, in the future by getting young people also very much part and parcel of the conference, not just adults talking to adults, but active engagement of young people. Those kind of platforms are very much needed indeed. Therefore, what we need are intergenerational dialogues and accord, policy debates, program implementation, and settings-based action. And as has been very well articulated initially in the AIDS movement, nothing about us without us. And then later on, the disability movement picked it up and said, nothing about us without us. So when we talk about adolescents, let's recognize that they're intelligent, well-motivated, and potentially can be a great force for transformation. So when we engage in the discussion, we must see the adolescents, if not in conferences like this, at least on platforms where intergenerational dialogues are not only possible but facilitated. And if we can, the youth can raise the voice for social change, even when adults have become cynical, then we can see true social transformation. And many of the ills that plague our society and are unfortunately casting a dark shadow on the future of our youth can be dealt with much better. And I believe it's absolutely important that we create those kind of platforms. As Toni Morrison, the Nobel laureate poet, said, if we do not create the future, the present extends itself. We cannot afford a passive response. We need an active and assertive response if we need to ensure that adolescents can blossom into full and fulfilling adulthood. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reddy, for that discerning and thought-provoking address, and for setting the tone for yet another day of insightful deliberations. Please, again, audience, join me in thanking Professor Reddy.